On the 15th anniversary week of the original Woodsboro killing spree, a palpable darkness hung in the air, suffocating the town. The memory of Billy Loomis and Stomacher's heinous acts still clung to every corner, whispering malevolence. Two high school girls, Marnie and Jenny, dared to speak of the dwindling stab series, oblivious to the encroaching horror. The spectral glow of the screen illuminated their faces, casting eerie shadows. As they watched the chilling opening scene of Stab 7, a shiver ran down their spines. Jenny, lured by a wicked impulse, ascended the creaking stairs to prank Marnie. The room seemed to hold its breath as she donned the Ghostface persona, but her laughter betrayed her. Suddenly, an unsettling silence enveloped Marnie, her voice replaced by that of Ghostface. A cruel taunt echoed through the room, driving Jenny towards the front door. Then, in a macabre crescendo, Marnie's bloody form hurtled through shattered glass, a grotesque marionette in the hands of the malevolent specter. Ghostface pursued Jenny, the nightmarish chase leading them into the renovated garage, now a chamber of impending doom. There, amid the steel jaws of an automated garage door, Jenny's fate was sealed. The merciless descent crushed her, a sickening crunch of bone and flesh, a symphony of horror. Ghostface's blade gleamed in the dim light, striking again and again, sealing Jenny's tragic end. As dawn broke, Sheriff Dewey Riley awoke to a dread-laden summons from his cell phone, beckoning him to the heart of the town's malevolence. Ghostface costumes adorned the lamp posts, a sinister mockery of the past. The air grew colder, thick with foreboding. Jill, Olivia, and Kirby were ensnared in a web of terror, their lives intertwined with a phone call that promised only doom. Sidney, a reluctant revenant, returned to Woodsboro, the weight of past horrors pressing upon her. The specter of suspicion loomed, unwilling to release its grip. In the shadowed halls of their high school, the specter of death danced, the anniversary casting its dark pallor. Film geeks and bloggers, oblivious to the encroaching nightmare, sought solace in their favorite horrors. Little did they know, the true horror had yet to unfold. Night fell, shrouding the town in a suffocating gloom. Jill's ex Trevor skulked in the shadows, a harbinger of malevolence. Kirby and Jill, ensnared in the chilling embrace of a horror film turned real, were helpless witnesses to a savage ballet of bloodshed. Ghostface, a wraith of unrelenting terror, toyed with them, a cruel puppeteer of their demise. Olivia's lifeless form bore witness to the unfathomable horrors that lurked in the night. As the battle raged, the line between life and death blurred, leaving only the echoes of anguished screams. In the cold, unforgiving light of day, the town awoke to the stench of death. Apologies hung heavy in the air, their hollow echoes a bitter reminder of the malevolence that had descended upon them. The twisted dance of fate continued, a macabre waltz through the depths of despair. And in the heart of the darkness, as the final strands of sanity unraveled, a sinister figure lurked, hidden by the mask of the abyss. The nightmarish web tightened, its threads woven with the blood and tears of the damned. The town of Woodsboro was no longer a sanctuary, but a tomb of unspeakable horrors. Gail is chased around the bales of hay, but her cries for help aren't heard over the opening scene of the original Stab. Gail is pinned down and Dewey spots her. He yells at the killer to freeze while aiming his gun, and three things happen at once. The killer stabs Gail in the shoulder, Gail pushes him away with her foot, and Dewey shoots. Dewey misses, the killer runs off, and Gail falls into the crowd of shocked teens, blood streaming from her right shoulder. She quickly warns Dewey about the webcam on the upper level before apparently losing consciousness. At Jill's house, Detective Haas goes on his rounds after Perkins said the fatal words, "I'll be right back." While his rounds, Haas sees that Jill's bedroom window is open and returns to the car, finding Perkins slumped over the steering wheel. A few moments later, she tenses when she hears them again. Surprising her, it's revealed that it's her Aunt Kate, who comes in clutching grocery bags and leaves again to grab another one. Ghostface calls Sidney and makes a comment about her family being most important to her. This prompts Sidney to go check on Jill, but she finds the room empty with Jill's laptop on the bed. Sidney opens it up and sees the messenger is left open, revealing that Kirby took Jill to her house for an after-party. Downstairs, Kate reveals that the cops are no longer out front, and Sidney grabs her hand, intending to lead the way to the car. When they open the back door, they see Ghostface's reflection on the wind chimes and turn around. At the front door, Ghostface wrestles to get inside, but Kate successfully closes the door by sitting down and propping herself between the door and the nearby archway. Unfortunately, Ghostface stabs her through the mail slot, killing her. At Kirby's house, Trevor arrives, causing an upset amongst the others around. Kirby, Jill, Robbie, and Charlie. He claims he was invited through a text from Jill's phone. Jill denies this and finds her phone has gone missing. She leaves to go upstairs in an attempt to find it, and Trevor follows her. Robbie heads outside, leaving Charlie and Kirby alone. They nearly have a moment, but are interrupted by Trevor. Charlie leaves, clearly frustrated because his kiss with Kirby was interrupted. Trevor, partially embarrassed by what he walked in on, leaves as well. Jill comes back downstairs, claiming Trevor didn't follow her upstairs. A drunk Robbie tries to stream his live video blog, but is surprised by Ghostface, who mercilessly stabs him and leaves him to die in the bushes. Sidney arrives with news of Kate's death, and Robbie struggles to the door, gasping "run" before finally dying. Jill and Sidney run upstairs while being pursued by Ghostface, while Kirby runs off somewhere downstairs. Sidney locks her in Jill and Kirby's room, ordering Jill to hide under the bed while she fakes Jill's escape out on the terrace. Ghostface seemingly buys it, and Sidney calls Dewey. She is forced to let go of the terrace to escape Ghostface. Downstairs, Sidney finds Kirby, and they lock themselves in a room in the basement. Charlie arrives, hands soaked in blood, and begs to be let inside. Sidney warns Kirby not to open the door unless she is 100% sure she can trust Charlie. Since Kirby doesn't trust him enough, all she and Sidney can do is watch as he is attacked by Ghostface before the patio lights go out. When they reactivate, Charlie is duct-taped to a chair, and Kirby is forced to become the new Casey Becker to his Stephen Orth in order to save his life, while Sidney sneaks back upstairs to find Jill. Kirby answers her first question wrong, but Ghostface gives her a pity last chance question. Without hearing the whole question, she answers by listing every possibility there is. When Ghostface doesn't respond after she's finished, she assumes she answered correctly. Rushing outside, Kirby sees a shadow slip away and frees Charlie while claiming she won. She is surprised when Charlie stabs her in the stomach and reveals himself as one of the killers. He claims that 4 years of classes together is too long for Kirby to wait before trying to make a move on him. Charlie runs inside, leaving a bleeding Kirby for dead. By the time he abandons her, she is still moving after being stabbed, with her fate uncertain. Sidney, seeing Jill is gone, goes to get Kirby, but is caught by Charlie, who holds Sidney at knife point. She struggles free but runs straight into a second killer's blade as she races for the front door. The second Ghostface is then revealed to be Jill, who is the mastermind behind the murder spree. Charlie then reveals Trevor, who was gagged and bound in a nearby cupboard, and Jill says he's the one who'll take the fall for the massacre. This is meant to include the attacks on Jill and Charlie, the only survivors. Jill shoots Trevor in the groin as punishment for cheating on her after taking her virginity, then shoots him in the head. When Charlie asks her to stab him in the shoulder, copying Billy and Stu's botched attempt to fake injuries in the first movie, she instead stabs him in the heart. Charlie is surprised by this, and Jill informs him that being the sole survivor would win her far more fans. As Charlie dies, Sidney asks how she could have done this to all of her friends, and Jill declares that she needs fans, not friends. He became the Schumacher of the remake. Jill continues her jealous rant to Sidney before stabbing her once more for good measure. Jill goes on to clean off the gun and leave it by Trevor's corpse. She uses his hand to scratch her cheek and pulls out a handful of her hair. Jill stabs herself with a knife by running against the wall, pressing the knife into her shoulder. Then she cleans the knife, runs into a glass frame, and purposely falls onto a glass coffee table to cause herself more believable injuries than collapses near Sidney. She mirrors her death pose exactly. Dewey, Judy, and the rest of the police arrive shortly after and stumble upon the carnage. At the hospital, Jill is hailed as a hero, and she jokingly says that she and Gail could write a book together due to their matching shoulder wounds. Dewey tells Jill that she might not be the sole survivor. Sidney is in the ICU but hasn't woken up from surgery yet. After Dewey leaves, Jill sneaks out of her room and goes to the ICU determined to kill Sidney. Jill proceeds to attack Sidney as she awakens, choking her and throwing her against the glass door of a nearby medicine cabinet. Dewey and Gail quickly realize the truth when they remember that Dewey never told Jill about Gail's attack or about her wounds. Dewey rushes off to find Sidney, calling Hicks for backup. Jill hides in the supply closet when she hears Dewey arriving and attacks him with a bedpan when he bursts in, only to be interrupted by Sidney. Jill regains the upper hand and pushes her knee into Sidney's stitches, causing them to become undone. Gail intervenes but is nearly shot by Jill, who has stolen Dewey's Glock 17. Hicks jumps into the room, throwing herself and Gail over the nearby bed. Jill orders them to come out on the threat of shooting Dewey. Hicks slowly comes up and gets down her gun as instructed. However, when she tells Jill not to do anything stupid, Jill gets annoyed and is apparently shot dead. Gail gets up too and sees Sidney moving. Stalling for time, Gail fumbles over words in a poor attempt to stop Jill as Sidney silently reaches for the shock paddles. Begging for one last word, Gail says, "Clear." Jill questions this and then is electrocuted by Sidney, who puts one paddle to each temple. Sidney then tells her that she forgot the first rule of remakes: don't fuck with the original. Gail and Sidney see that Dewey's alive. Behind them, a shadow moves and Jill jumps up, pouncing at Sidney with a glass shard, only to be shot in the chest by a knowing Sidney. Sidney, in all the action, her injuries, and exhaustion, lies back down next to her cousin's body and whispers, "I don't know about you, but I feel a lot better." Outside, loads of reporters are praising Jill for having single-handedly ended the Woodsboro killings, finally giving her the fame she so desired. The final shot is of Jill's dead eyes as the whole town is about to realize that their supposed savior is actually the mastermind behind it all.